there are four things to finding your joy, and it's that self-practice or self-awareness. It's practicing gratitude on a daily basis, and it's taking care of you, being your best friend, and then it's service. It's giving to others.
Have you ever heard the phrase becoming the best version of yourself? Yeah, me too. But what does that even mean, and how do we become that person? I'm here to help you navigate through those questions and come up with actionable steps in order for you to live your best life. We've got to discover what we want. We've got to figure out a plan on how to get there, and then we have to go. We can't just sit and wait any longer. Life won't wait on us. So come join me on this constant journey to become the best version of yourself and to find your best you. I'll see you on the other side. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Nick Carrier's Best You podcast. I'm super stoked for today's interview. I got the lovely lady Megan Kearney with me today, and Megan is a creative vinyasa and thoughtful movement teacher who emphasizes the neuromuscular connection. You've been a yoga teacher for over 15 years now, and like you just told me, you've had your own yoga studio, Ebb and Flow, for the last 5 years, and you're part of the yoga medicine teaching faculty. And so I'm really excited to get into a lot of that stuff: yoga medicine, ebb and flow, the lessons that you learned being an entrepreneur, like you were just telling me, and then the different classes and curriculums that you're kind of starting to work on now towards sleep deprivation and towards depression and all that kind of good stuff. So I appreciate you spending the time with me today, Megan.
Awesome. I'm so glad that you could have me on, Nick.
Yeah, well, I want to go ahead and start with basically how you got into yoga. You know, I've read that you got into yoga through meditation about 25 years ago, and then you've been a yoga teacher for now 15 years. So tell me a little bit about why all of a sudden, after like the 10-year gap between those two, why you wanted to become a yoga teacher.
Yeah, wow. So, meditation, I was fortunate. I had a friend in college and we swam together, and he said, "Hey, you've got to read this book on meditation. It's life-changing." And I was like, "All right, that's a pitch right there." So I took the book, I read it, and I fell in love with meditation. It taught me so much about learning to sit with my thoughts, learning to kind of pay attention to what was really going to bring me joy, what my passion was, what I was going to be driven towards. And so meditation became a way for me to quiet all of these thoughts that I had, all these ideas that I had, and help direct me towards my goal. And so sitting with those ideas, knowing which way to go, has been so powerful in helping me decide the route of a yoga teacher. I ended up creating my degree at Maryland, and I refer to the meditation as helping me do that, because I probably would have just signed up for any major at the University of Maryland, but I sat with it and was like, this isn't what I want to do. They don't have my major. So I literally went to someone and said, I want to create my degree. And they said, all right, pitch it to us. So I told them I wanted kinesiology, I wanted business, I wanted journalism, I wanted leadership, and I wanted to combine it all together. And they let me do it. And so years later, I was living that. I was getting to say that I used my college degree to its fullest, which there's not many of us out there that get to do that. And I was really enjoying life, and things started to fall apart. I hit my 30s. I was a triathlete. I was a triathlon coach. I had fallen off the meditation wagon in that I got so busy. It was the first thing I let go. And so my injury made me kind of sit back. I was running a business. I had to hire people in to help me. It was a personal training business. I had to step away from my triathlon team and really pay attention to myself and take care of myself. And that was the first time that I really started to kind of put my face mask on, take care of my body, myself, pay attention, and get back into meditation. Which eventually just showed me I was kind of off kilter. I wasn't following the path that felt right to me, and I wasn't doing the things that I was passionate about anymore. And so I got myself healthy. I started teaching my triathletes yoga. So that's how I got into teaching it, was because they were refusing to do it on their own as a part of their training plan. and really was able to introduce them to meditation as well, using it before races, using it as a recovery tool. And so when we moved south, we decided we were going to just pursue. My husband was going to pursue his passion. I had supported him in this decision to really quit the six-figure business world and go be a firefighter, which was his lifelong dream. He had done it as a volunteer for 15 years prior to doing it full time. And so we picked up, we sold our house and we moved down south where he became a firefighter here, and we own our yoga studio. So it was really the only reason I went into owning a studio, which is kind of funny, is there wasn't anything around here. You know, I was looking around for yoga and the community needed it. So I decided, even though I knew the entrepreneurial rule is, even though you're good at something doesn't mean you necessarily should go out and run it. So there's some balance that I learned to being an admin versus being a yoga teacher, that the studio has taught me. But it definitely brought yoga more present in my life. And so I kind of say that I had a backdoor into yoga. It was meditation that got me there. We often say in yoga that meditation is the end result anyway. We're hoping to get ourselves to be able to sit still long enough to meditate. So I was kind of already doing the meditation, and that really self-study part, which is what's so great about meditation, right? Is that you learn to watch and see and think. I mean, I'll be driving and I'll get angry about something going on in the car, and I'll go, wow, what is that? Why am I reacting that way? And so it really teaches us to kind of sit back and be a spectator. And I don't want to say that like being a gladiator is a bad thing, because it's not. Sometimes we need to get in there and we need to fight for the things that we can change. But it really is a powerful tool to be able to step back, to see how you need to move or respond rather than being reactive. And that's why meditation and that, what we call in yoga, self-study, is so important to really helping you figure out what's going to bring you joy, what's going to put you on that path to greatness.
Right. You know, I think that it's just a process of self-awareness, right? You being able to take a step back and kind of give yourself the space between stimulus and response, and be able to kind of evaluate exactly how that stimulus is making you feel, and then being able to actually process that and respond accordingly. But what I really liked that you picked out that you said was that when you got really busy, meditation was like the first thing that you stopped, or the first thing that you maybe sacrificed because of that. And I feel like a lot of people probably do that. And I resonated with me because I realized recently that I found myself in a rut, and I was like, what the heck is why? And then I realized I had stopped going to church as frequently and stopped practicing my faith as frequently. And I was like, you know what? Why the heck did I stop that, when that was like one of the foundations of me being in a happy state, if you will. So talk a little bit about like, how can we prevent ourselves from stopping doing those things, or making excuses for not doing those things when it seems like other things in our life are or should be a priority?
Right. I feel you. And I think everybody does the same reaction. It's just, maybe it's church, maybe it's meditation, maybe it's going to the gym and taking care of themselves. Right. And so I think that it comes from, whether there's different reasons, you know, all of us come from a different experience. And what I see in my experience is that we give it up because it's taking care of us. It's something that we really know feeds us. And therefore we're like, all right, I got to go do this other stuff. Sometimes it can be, I got to focus on other people. I've got to take other people. I've got to make this business go. And so we feel like it's sort of a luxury, I think, to take care of ourselves, when the reality is it's not. We have to be our own best friend. Mm-hmm. And that includes knowing when you need downtime, giving yourself downtime and boundaries, and knowing what's your non-negotiable. If your non-negotiable is going to church or meditating every day or sitting in prayer, maybe don't make yourself so stressed out about achieving a certain amount of time or how often you want to be there, but make a point to just do it and to marinate in the things that make you happy. You know, it's interesting. I also think that along with being your own best friend is this negative self-talk that we hear, where we berate ourselves. We're like, you're not good enough to do this, or no, why are you doing that? And we would never talk to our best friend or allow our best friend to talk to us that way. And so when we take the time to really show ourselves that we care about ourselves like a best friend, we can really fuel ourselves, and we have to fuel ourselves first before we go and take care of others. And it's there are four things to finding your joy, and it's that self practice or self awareness. It's practicing gratitude on a daily basis, and it's taking care of you, being your best friend, and then it's service. It's giving to others and turning that action into action, rather. So yeah, I think it's the first thing to go. I know for me, it was absolutely, I got busy with my kids. I felt like I needed to take care of them. I've got students that need my attention. And, I can see it. When I teach, I can see it if I am not on the mat practicing and doing a daily meditation practice. And it's been a rough year for us here in our house, but every single day, I had a teacher teach this to me. And so I do it. Is I just, before I get out of bed, I fold my hands and I just list things that I'm grateful for, that, and it can be so small. It can be like, I'm breathing, because when you're in the suck, you've got to just find the things, right? And you're like, okay, I'm breathing, I'm moving, I've got a house over my head, roof over my head, all of these things, and starts to build a little bit more resilience for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I really, I think that your whole answer kind of, to me, sounded like this, where the fact that you have to be super aware to what, like, you were aware that meditation was the thing that helped you after, like, realizing that you were in a tough place because you stopped doing it. And, like, I realized that I was in a tough place because I stopped going to church. It's like you have to go through that self-awareness process of, like, why am I going through this? Like, why am I in a rut right now? And then I really liked the powerful phrase that you used of make it a non-negotiable. It's like, if you're aware that it's something that is helping you out so much, then have the discipline to make it a non-negotiable and something that you're going to do on a regular basis, like the meditation, like the gratitudes and things like that, and just be able to implement that into your life.
Yeah, it's baby steps. When I teach meditation, my students get really hung up on, I'm just going to go as long as I can meditate, or I'm just going to sit there, set the timer and see how long I can do it. Like it's a race. And I said, no, we're training the brain to sit, and not to sit until we're done thinking, but to sit until we tell it we're done. And so start with just 2 minutes. Don't make it a big thing. Do it in your car before you go into work. Park the car, sit there for 2 minutes and meditate, or immerse yourself in prayer. I heard a quote once, and it's interesting because you had said church, and it made me think of it, that prayer is us talking to God and meditation is us listening. And so the two can be really powerful if you use them together.
Yeah, no, I agree. So when we're having these tough moments, a lot of people always have stressed out moments, like in a state of depression. How do you begin to work yourself out of that? Like, is it trying to continually work on being more self-aware, or like, what is the key to start working out of it?
Yeah, it's absolutely that self-study. And I don't speak from depression from having it myself, but I did go through a bout of PTSD and found myself, as a scientist, actually kind of amazed, where I was watching my body just lose control, where I couldn't actually stop myself. And I asked my therapist, I said, first of all, I'm fascinated by this process of my body's response to this stress. And he said, well, I need you to take your science hat off and take care of yourself here, because breath and awareness is the key, right? So he started to teach me some tools that I already had in my toolbox, but bringing them out and saying, look, notice that when that stressor starts, your breath changes. And that takes a great deal of awareness. And I think most of us are moving through our day at such fast paces that we don't have a chance to really evaluate where we are, emotionally, mentally, physically, even down to, what does my breath feel like? What does joy feel like? What is sadness? What is the physical response happening in my body? Like, not many of us, I think a lot of us are detached from that. And that's where we start to get hung up on vices and things that could maybe fill or make those things feel better. So, to answer your question, I think it starts with coming to the really basic breath and awareness. My husband could speak to it. The work that we're doing now with depression and sleep deprivation, especially among first responders, is real. I mean, in 2017, the number of suicides among first responders was higher than the line of duty death. And so the key, we believe, is meditation. And we've seen a huge change in him being able to sit with his thoughts, which really initially started out as quite negative and berating, and asking him why he was doing what he was doing, and telling him things that, again, that best friend would never say, right? And so not to say that it's the cure for depression or what anyone's going through, because I think that there's a whole bunch that goes into healing you when you deal with depression or PTSD or anxiety or any of those mood disorders that you might find. I think that meditation, breath work can be a great asset.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree. There's not just like one thing that you need to do to be able to get out of it, right? It's just, I think a lot of people probably feel like, I don't know what to do at all right now. So it's just like maybe like an initial step to do. So I think, the meditation and the breathing thing is powerful. And I want to get into first responders. But first, I picked out something that you talked about earlier. You were talking to your therapist, and you said that he brought up or gave you some things in your toolbox, but that you really already had, but you weren't necessarily practicing or doing all the time. And I think that kind of goes to the point where a lot of us know know things that we should do, but don't do what we know. So what's the difference between people who actually do what they know they should, between the people who don't do what they know? If that makes sense. Like, they actually take action on it. What's the difference between the person that takes action on what they know they should do from the person who just kind of sits in their laurels, if you will?
Yeah, I don't know. There could be anything stopping that. It could be the fear of moving forward. We were talking the other day. I happen to really love growth. I thrive in it. And a really dear friend of mine the other day was talking about this tough year that I've been through, my husband and I both. And she was like, the difference is that you don't just sit on the fence going, man, this really sucks. I don't know if I want to get in there. She said, you are like, yes, like that's going to help me grow. It sucks right now, but I'm going to jump in there and I'm going to go get in with those feelings. And that's a scary thing to do. And some people can do that on their own, right? Some people can be with those feelings, can meditate through and work through it. And then others are going to need some help. They're going to need to seek out people that can help them do that work. And help build their toolbox to get them to the next step. I have a client that I work with, and I keep saying, I think you really should maybe talk to somebody, find a good therapist and work with them, because the work that we're doing is helpful, but it's just not getting him there to the next step. So, and that's beyond my scope of work and knowledge base that I have. And that's what I think is so amazing about yoga medicine, is it gives these teachers the opportunity to be kind of the continuing care from therapists and doctors and orthopedics and physical therapists to send their clients to us, because we have a knowledge of the research and the science, and we can carry out the remainder of the work so that there's this comprehensive care that's continuing. Because how many times do people go to someone and it's just like, all right, your time's up, insurance has stopped paying for it, now what, right? So I think it's important that our teachers are trained and taught the research and what's out there currently to be helpful for their students, but also to recognize, okay, what are some red flags that we can then send our students and say, hey, I think you should go see this person or this specialist to get some bigger help.
So what would trigger those people to actually go see help? Because I think a lot of times it's like it's hard to maybe admit to yourself that you need to go see help, or sometimes you just kind of like see the importance of it, and then it's like maybe it's not going to help me. So like, what do you have to instill in those people that you're talking to make them actually go take action and go see it? Is there anything in particular? Like, I guess, like, what did your therapist give you to make you start doing some of those things that you hadn't been doing?
Again, like it was an easy sell for me because I'm all about growth, and I'm oh, okay, yeah, let's do that. And for others, you can lead them to water, and it's really up to them. It's their choice. So they either want to see the current situation proliferate where they just stay there and they stay kind of stagnant. I liken it to being on an old record where you're stuck in that same song over and over again, and getting the help, whether it's taking the next step of seeing a therapist, or maybe it's doing the meditation work and starting to work small baby steps of breath work and meditation to help you jump that track to the next song. But it's their work, right? It's their experience, and you can only talk with them and be open and honest about your experience and how it's helped you. And I think that alone, and creating a community that wants to talk about mental health, that's open to saying, yeah, I go to a therapist. I work with someone on a regular basis. Even that is taboo. I can't tell you how many times I had students that are shocked that I do that. I'm like, yeah, I know what I know, and I know enough to know that I also have to have somebody in my corner to check in and watch me, right? And just to make sure I'm on that path, the right path. So gosh, I wish there was an answer that you could say, right, this is what it's going to be, and this is how we're going to get them there. But, in my experience, like use my husband as an example, because we talk about this quite frequently. We went months before he actually saw a doctor, and it was really, I just waited it out. And he finally got diagnosed 6 months after his initial break of depression, his bout of depression. And within 5 minutes, the doctor had diagnosed him with depression, severe sleep depression, and severe, or sleep deprivation, and severe depression. And it was like a light bulb moment for him. He was like, oh my gosh, what have I been doing? But then also it took him another 2 months to slowly climb out of it from there. So even though cognitively he knew what was going on, he still had this voice there kind of in his head. And so the work of coming home and doing yoga and meditating, a lot of self-care, and learning that you just can't work yourself to death. And for him, as a person that lives in service, who has this calling to run into a burning building when most people are running the other way, for him to learn self-care is so key. And it's so hard for those men and women to do that too. So, and that's why we are doing what we're doing, is to teach them how to take care of themselves.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was actually, one of the questions I was going to ask the answer came very apparent. And I was going to say, like, why is so tough why do first responders, you mentioned how like I forget the exact stat, but they're more likely, the suicide rate is higher. And I was gonna be like, why is that? But I guess it's just because like they're so about service of other people and so selfless and always giving to where they don't always take care of themselves as much.
Yeah. And I think that vulnerability, in my experience, in that line of work is definitely seen as a weakness. You don't want to sit around the table of your guys and talk about, for instance, he talks about a suicide call that they had, and it was a young kid in his 20s, and it was a rough call, and his body had been there for days, for weeks actually. And they're debriefing. They just sat there, and Kevin said, I can still smell the body, and yet nobody wants to say that. Nobody wants to say, I'm struggling with this, because these are the guys that you need to know that have your back going into this. And so it's really important that for us, in our mind, that off shift, we create a community, a safety net for these guys, and gals in this line of work to be able to express themselves, to talk about the struggles of their jobs. It doesn't make them any weaker. It doesn't make them terrible at their job, but it helps give them an outlet.
Well, I think that's so cool that you guys are doing that for people who need it so much because they're just so giving and so selfless. But we've mentioned it a couple times now. Yoga medicine. I've mentioned it. You've talked a little bit about it. So I want you to give everybody a little bit of background, and so they know what the heck we're talking about, into what yoga medicine is and a little bit how you got into it.
Yeah. So yoga medicine was started and founded by Tiffany Cruikshank, who's a phenomenal yoga teacher and a licensed acupuncturist, and an international yoga teacher. And she is just absolutely amazing. And she saw a need to create, or rather bridge the gap between medicine and the yoga world. And so she created this teacher training that is not only just a 200, which I'm on the faculty for, but also an additional advanced course for the 500 and going on. I think right now she's the only one I know that's got 1,000 and I think 2,000 if I'm not misspeaking. So you can train for a good long while with yoga medicine. And she's created a research foundation that Darling Knopik runs, really making sure that we're getting the best data on yoga and meditation and how it's affecting. We're using drawing and metadata to really see where our efforts are helping and affecting people, where yoga is needed, but also training teachers that here's the body, here are the specifics. Like I said earlier, creating this continuity of care of when someone leaves physical therapy, how can we help them in yoga? Yoga should be modified to their body and not necessarily them trying to get themselves stuck into the shape. So all of our teachers come to the program and they're trained in all of the latest. They select modules. So the more advanced training programs are module based. So you could do it strictly on shoulder or spine or mental health. And how does yoga play into that? And so we're doing great work. We have a huge community. There's, I think, about 6,000 of us around the world. So a really big fellowship, which is also what makes it so amazing. You have some like-minded individuals, all who practice what we preach. And so it really is a phenomenal group of men and women who really want to see yoga become a little bit more predominant in treatment and in assisting, or so to speak, a toolbox, if we go back to that, of how someone can take care of themselves, overall wellness.
Wow, that's cool. So when you guys go through the training, you talked about how there's different specific modules, but what really sets apart yoga medicine training compared to traditional yoga training?
Yeah, well, traditional yoga training at a 200 level, which is your basic week. I consider it like the bachelor's degree of yoga, right? If you were to kind of break it down, and that's overseen and in a national program, and they can vary. I mean, it really depends upon the school's desire and what they want to focus on. And so the minimum requirements, I believe, is 20 hours of anatomy. And so yoga medicine obviously takes that to a larger degree, really teaching and honing in on anatomy and kinesthetics. How does the body move? How are we moving? And then as you progress in doing more advanced trainings, you learn about issues of integrity or things that you might see in a shoulder or in the spine that create some contraindications and need a little bit more focus in terms of how can yoga help them now? How can yoga create strength in this joint, mobility in this joint? How can we take them out of pain? And, pain's an interesting topic as well as depression and mental health, but pain is related to our brain. And they oftentimes can say now in research, the status of where we are in our level of stress can indicate or be a precursor to how we tolerate pain. And so we're living in this really high stress pressure cooker of a world with a lot going on, and pain management has become an issue. People come to us because they don't know where else to turn. And so it's either yoga or maybe it's drugs, medication. Opioids is a huge epidemic that we're dealing with. And so more and more people need an option, and yoga becomes that option. So yoga medicine provides that training and provides that bridge for that gap.
Has there been a gap that how long have you been doing yoga medicine now?
Oh gosh. I did my first advanced training in 2016.
Okay, great.
And so I've been with them ever since, started teaching with them last year.
So has there been a specific gap that you've realized that yoga medicine has filled in your life?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mentioned here back at home, when I come home, I bring in doctors, I bring in PTs, I bring in surgeons, orthosurgeons, and we bring them in for what we call our comprehensive care breakfast. And we just show them what we're able to provide. We follow through. We in no way diagnose and create prescriptive routines, but we do offer things for people that would be helpful to strengthen the shoulder. Again, we're not telling them this is what's wrong. We have some red flags that we train our students so that they know when to send them. When is yoga not going to be helpful? And when do they absolutely need to see a doctor? And how can you use yoga to help them? And that hasn't existed. I think that was a missing piece. I think we knew that yoga could be helpful in sort of this kind of intangible way, but now we specifically, yoga medicine is so science-based that we see it in a very tangible way, how it can be helpful.
Yeah, it sounds like it's helpful in so many different ways, but I'm curious as to, you've been doing it since 2016 now, so almost 2.5 years. Was there been anything that's like the most common question, most common problem, or just like a common theme that you see with a lot of people who come to you?
Oh gosh, I would say back pain. Absolutely, hands down, back pain. And they've been to doctors, they've been to pain management therapy, they've had injections, they've tried everything. They've had surgeries, and they're at their wits' end. And I think depression can seep in, right? Obviously, if we're not able to move and participate, we can't serve or do what we're called to do, we start to feel like we're less than and feel like we're never going to get out of it. And it becomes like this pain, like mind storm, I think, where we get kind of drawn into it. And so by using yoga, using meditation, you can help. Obviously, we're helping the perception of the pain. We're trying to help them. Some of them will always be in pain, right? That's not something everybody wants to hear, but pain is a part of life. And so if we're running away from it, what would happen if we treated it differently, if we looked at it differently, if we made friends with the pain rather than trying to always push it away? And so our thing is, how do we get you moving? How do we not make it hurt so bad, and get you into a program or a yoga practice where it's helpful and at least keeping you mobile?
Gotcha. So we talked a little bit about your work with first responders and how your husband was a firefighter, and you guys are writing a book, correct?
Yes.
Awesome. Cool. So I want you to talk a little bit about hit the early days of him going into firefighting and the different challenges, and kind of now, like, why you're writing the book, why you guys are writing the book together.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
You're like, where to begin?
He's been a firefighter since I met him, and he pursued a career. He actually worked for FEMA. He was involved in 9/11. Really good friends of ours. Still to this day, I think those guys bonded over what they went through, and they've been close. But he was with Urban Search and Rescue when 9/11 happened, so he's very tied in and connected with the guys up in New York. So it really hit home, and I saw firsthand how a really traumatic event could affect someone's mental health. And so that experience, and then parlayed into him becoming a full-time firefighter, which I'm really blessed. He shares a lot with me because I guess I'm in anatomy. I do cadaver work. There's not a whole lot that upsets me or gets me my stomach turned, so to speak. So I hear a lot, but a lot of the guys and gals tend to go home and just stuff it and deal with it and not want to impress that or share it with their families. And it's also a career that doesn't necessarily pay well. So a lot of the guys and gals will go and get second jobs and actually end up creating this vicious cycle of not taking care of themselves, not resting their brain, not restoring their body before they go back on shift, right? And so we've started to see, especially in our experience, where Kevin was just working himself to the bone and making ends meet and was having these calls. He works down here. Actually, his volunteer station is busier than his full-time career station here in Georgia. But it's a college town, so they get these kind of silly calls. They'll wake up in the middle of the night and they'll get up and go do them and come back. And it was starting to really wear on him. And sleep deprivation, I think, is something that sneaks up on people. It's we think, oh, one night's sleep, whatever. But it really is, if you look at the research, it starts to build up and affect your aging process, how your brain heals. In fact, the most recent research that I've seen is that we need that deep sleep to help remove cell waste out of the brain, right? So that we have healthy brains. We're not living in a brain fog. Well, who do we need to make good split decisions in a moment's notice? And it's our first responders. And so we absolutely need to help take care of their brains. And sleep deprivation is sort of the entryway into depression. And there's PTSD, obviously, that gets affected from the job and what they see. But a lot of them, we see high divorce rates, high drinking, alcoholism rates. Suicide rate is off the charts, 20% higher than the public.
Jeez.
And so it's really a public health issue for our first responders, is we expect so much from them. We should give back for sure and talk about this. It's not anything that makes them weak. It actually makes them stronger.
Right. I think it's really cool how y'all's lives are very integrated in terms of kind of like what you're doing. And you've kind of, a lot of that was, I feel like a lot of that you created yourselves, but a lot of that just kind of happened as well. So I feel like you guys have a lot of conversations together and deep conversations. What's like the biggest lesson that you think that you have learned from your husband?
Oh my gosh. Oh, biggest lesson. He is absolutely fearless and brave. And to work with him through his depression and to hear the thoughts in his head and the things that he was grappling with is heartbreaking. I've never experienced depression, and yet to hear him go through even feeling like he had to fake a smile and fake like he had to do things is just painful. And I don't know how he would get up every day. I just think he's so courageous and brave, and he's so amazing for wanting to share this story and talk about it with his brothers and sisters and get a conversation going. Because we see alcohol, like we said, we see alcoholism and divorce and infidelity, all these things on the rise because of an offshoot of a job that they love to do, that they're passionate about. And it can be solved. All of that can be fixed. We can take care of that. So I would say bravery. He's absolutely the most courageous person I've met.
So you're developing classes and a curriculum to help first responders, right?
Yeah. So we're starting an organization called the Stronger Shield Project. And it's about helping first responders once they're off shift in the community. There's some great organizations that are doing work at the departments, but our focus is on training yoga teachers and providing a safety net when they're off shift. So we'll have content, we'll have curriculum of classes teaching yoga teachers how to invite them into our community. And long term, we're hoping that as a nonprofit, we will actually fund studios and teachers for offering the classes for free, because we absolutely don't want to charge our first responders for these classes. We want it to be karma. We want people to pay it forward and support this program, strategic partners to come on board to support the program, so that we can really reach out to our first responders, bring them into a studio, create a community of all of them. So officers laying on mats next to firefighters, next to medics, next to ER doctors and personnel, and dispatch. We tend to forget about telecommunications. So that they really would have a community where they focus, and the curriculum would be very specific to how do we heal the brain? How do we get them ready for their next shift? How do we strengthen them physically, make them more responsive? But also providing them content. Like for firefighters, one of the things we're working on right now is a breathing technique to help them get back to sleep after their adrenaline has gone through the roof in the middle of the night, right? So there'll be content available, and we're really excited to grow this part of our life, because this is obviously our passion.
Right. It sounds so cool. And you touched on it a little bit, but I want you to see if you can dive a little bit deeper, because I think creating a curriculum and creating content and that whole development process, because you guys are trying to make it like so specific to this group of people, I'm sure there's like a lot that goes into it. So I want you to talk a little bit more to how you guys are going about specifically identifying what the problems are, and then how to specifically create something and develop something that goes to answering and fixing that problem.
Yeah, so you actually touched on it earlier. Kevin and I are the perfect blend together, the two of us. And so his degree actually from college is an emergency health services degree. He has a lot of connections there in the industry. And so we're reaching out to them. We're looking at research. We're getting experiential information, talking to guys, having these discussions, and really trying to fine tune as we go. And the biggest thing is providing the classes and seeing how the experience works. And, we had an opportunity last week. He went away to Love Your Brain. It was an interesting story. He actually met one of my students who I work with, who's a TBI, traumatic brain injury thriver. And it turned out this was one of Kevin's victims who had been in a car accident 2 years ago. And Kevin backboarded him, sent him off to the hospital. 2 years later, he's at my studio without him knowing it, doing yoga. And so
my gosh, that's nuts.
Neat kind of full circle. He went with Justin to Love Your Brain last week in Maine for their retreat. And he found it so therapeutic for him. He came back and said, this is what we need to do for first responders and their spouses. Because that's the thing, is there is an entire family that's probably behind this one person who's also affected, right? And so bringing that person in, that spouse in, and taking care of them for a weekend retreat, teaching the spouse, like, this is what they're going through. This is what sleep deprivation does to you, giving them tools to recognize when their partner is in need, right? And so, we're constantly learning. We're calling upon people that we've known in the industry for a really long time. We're fortunate we've been in this family of first responders for over 25 years. So we know a lot of people.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, you guys are definitely the perfect two to attack something like this. So is there anything about yoga medicine or about y'all's work with first responders that we haven't touched on yet that you want to share? I know we've got a good amount on it, but I didn't know if anything that is.
No, I mean, I think that anybody that might be looking to really deepen their work in yoga in the anatomical sense, but also to learn more about the physiology of the body and how the brain works, and how can yoga, meditation, and breath work really assist people who are dealing with conditions that affect any of that or all of the wellness, then yoga medicine might be for you. And I would really encourage them to look into it. It is a phenomenal community. Almost all of my best friends now are spread out across the world, and they're in this program. And it's just a beautiful thing to have such a strong community behind you as you're learning, to know that the research is going to be there to support what we're doing, and continue to grow. And there's a huge service component to what yoga medicine does as well, with our seva work in India. So I can't say enough about the program. I'm so grateful to Tiffany, because she's really created a phenomenal teaching curriculum, as well as staff and faculty. And it's just a great group. So they should definitely look into it. And if you're a firefighter, first responder, and or a spouse, check us out. It's coming. Stronger Shield Project.
Cool. Awesome. Well, the next question I want to ask is, I like to ask a question about vision and kind of what you see for yourself down the road. So I always start off by asking the age question. So how old are you currently?
I'm going to be 43 this summer.
Awesome. Yeah, sometimes I get different responses when I ask the age question.
Well, I get better as I age. I just feel like more like, this is what I want to do. This is who I am, not apologetic, very confident. So
cool. So you're 43, and 10 years down the road, inevitably you're going to be 53. So what does 53-year-old Megan look like? What have you accomplished, and what are you currently doing?
Oh gosh, 53-year-old Megan is, I work on this all the time. So this is actually an easy question for me. We're going to be traveling. We want to see the world. We want to get to know our brethren around the world, in terms of our brothers and sisters in first responding. We're hoping to do it by sailing. We really enjoy sailing. So that's our goal. My kids will be graduated, and our goal is just to keep running the businesses that we have, the studio, to be a foundation in this community that we live in, as well as our nonprofit work with Stronger Shield, to continue and just spread the word. So be what is that, semi-retired, but not really.
Yeah. No, but I think if some people completely retire, you kind of lose some sort of purpose, and you lose some sort of mission. So you got to have that drive still.
Yeah, it's going to be work that is that's sustainable. What we do is very easily something that we can continue to do for the rest of our lives. So we're happy to continue to evolve that as it changes, as aging happens, and do it as gracefully as possible.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Well, before I ask the last question, I want to acknowledge you, Megan, because I think it's really cool when people go through specific things in their lives and are very aware of how they have kind of worked their way maybe out of it, or just to the next chapter or to the next step. And I feel like that's something that you and your husband have done such a great job of. Is like you have both been in like different spots in your lives that were maybe challenging, and you're aware of kind of the different things that you guys have been able to do to work out of it. And it's always a constant process, but now because of your awareness, you're looking to demonstrate and help other people who might be going through the same or at least similar things, and help them because of the experiences that you've had. So I think that's super cool for you to be able to be super aware, and then to be willing to give that back to other people is even 10 times cooler.
Thanks, man. I'm excited too. It's the hero's journey, right? I gotta go share it now.
Awesome. Well, I know people are going to want to be able to learn a little bit more about yoga medicine and ebb and flow and all the good stuff that you got going on. So where can people support you more and all that good stuff?
Yeah, so they can probably right now the best place to find me on Instagram, Megan Kearney. We have a new website that's going up for strongershieldproject.org, so that'll be coming. And as always, they can find a yoga medicine teacher through the yoga medicine website. I'm in Atlanta, or just outside of Atlanta, but there's teachers all over the world that they can access and talk to and work with.
Cool. What's that website? It's on the Yoga Medicine Teacher.
Yogamedicine.com, I think, and under search for a teacher tool.
Cool. Awesome. Well, very good. Well, the last question I always like to ask people is, I feel that becoming the best version of yourself is a constant journey. I don't think we're ever at the best version of ourselves. Maybe like our last day, we can have the confidence that we got close enough. And I also believe that becoming the best version of yourself is a very unique journey. Like, I believe that the way I'm going to become the best version of myself is going to be different than the way that you're going to become the best version of yourself. So what I want to ask for you personally is, if you could currently do or work on 3 things to get closer to that best version of yourself, what are those 3 things that you would currently do or currently work on?
Oh, wow. Okay. So I just did this last week. So I appreciate you being
Perfect.
right on it with the questions. So I did green light, yellow light, red light. And for me, it was really the 3 things would be making some time for myself. So I started to peel out to kind of really segment what classes do I want to keep on the schedule at my local community, and then parsing out time for myself to really take care of myself, because we're quite busy here with kids and this new organization that we're running. The second was just I'm going to give myself 2 weeks to say no. I have people asking me to buy things, to do this and that, and I've just have decided that I'm going to say no for a couple weeks and let myself just settle. So that's kind of big for me, because I love to say yes to everything. And then I would say the third is just is that downtime. I spent the last weekend in my garden getting my feet in the dirt, and it felt amazing. And I was like, these are the things that continue to bring me joy, ground me, bring me back to nature, and make me see that I'm all part of this bigger fabric. And I need to do more of that. So my goal is to get outside more. Actually, I'm getting rid of my stationary bike so that it makes me get outside and walk and be more in nature. So those are my 3.
Awesome. Well, I want to give you permission to do the third thing more and more, because I think to me, it came full circle right when you said that, in the sense that we talked about early on how meditation was the first thing that you dropped when you got busy, but it was the thing that helped you the most. And those things are there. And thing number 3 are the things that bring you joy, bring you happiness, and that help you so much. So got to stick with it and keep doing those things.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Thanks so much for having me on. It was a blast.
Yeah, definitely. Appreciate you coming.